All right, I'm gonna call to order the Ways and Means meeting of Tuesday, March 18th, 2025 at 6:05 PM. This meeting is being recorded by the Ways and Means Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify this guy at this time. All right, thank you, Anthony. That being said, we're gonna do a roll call of members. Counselor Bottomley, here. Counselor Masser Totaro,
Here.
Counselor Brown,
Here.
Counselor Perry,
Here.
and I'm Counselor Toronto. We got a full vote here. Thank you for all being in person. It makes it easier for the rest of the night. We have approval of minutes from our February 18th, 2025 meeting. Is there a motion for that?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of February 18th.
I'll second that. All right, and is there any discussion on those ones?
It was pretty good to me.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no non-ayes, we'll go on. We have public comment as required by our Greenfield City ordinance. Anybody out there? We got nobody here. You got, oh, Pamela, would you like to join us?
What you say your name was?
Have we met before?
Tell me I'm a movie star.
Sure.
Famous. My name is Pamela Goodwin. I live at 54 High Street. And I think all I want to say after attending the last two school committee meetings where we're looking for lots of money for the school department, which I think is a very, very important department. I'm going to echo a few other people and I'm opposed to pitting department against department. We have a limited amount of money in the city of Greenfield. And tonight's agenda looks really full on looking for money and needing money. And so I would just like to say, I don't feel like I have to say it in front of this committee, but I want to say to the public, you know, we just have to use common sense. And you can't find money if it doesn't exist. So I feel that our mayor is doing the best that she can, given what's in the treasury department and the people that she's consulting with. And I really appreciate everybody's hard work because this budget season I always thought was kind of shorter, but I feel like it's budget season the whole year. People have been working on budget all the time because there's a lot of expenses in a city this size. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there is no other public comment at this time. I'm reading the room here. There's nobody else here, nobody else online. There are no public hearings. I will just say, reluctantly, though many of you have maybe seen the chairs meeting earlier this month. I've been solicited, pleaded with, dare say begged, by some folks to stick around as chair of this committee that I do not want to chair anymore. And my concession is that I will hang on through May's Ways and Means, which would essentially get us through the budget season. I understand it's a difficult time, and it would be a difficult time to try to start anew. And to my own chagrin, I will stick it out and hope that we can facilitate getting through this as smoothly as possible, because I don't imagine it's going to be a very easy year. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. I would say peace out and step down. But I will be sending in a letter. that my last meeting will be the May meeting. So I'll give you guys a couple months, to figure it out who's gonna take for the rest of the year. Yeah. So that being said, we can move to our motions for the night. A lot of these are more or less first readings, though this is our time to discuss these. It's a little out of order from some of the years past of how we would normally do it, but it doesn't mean different isn't better, and may actually save us some time if we already know what's going to be put forward as potential motions. So I actually don't hate this method because then we don't have to debate things that are ultimately not going to be put forward. There are some questions. I hope the mayor joins us at some point. If not, we can definitely submit questions between now and next month. We're not going to be voting on these tomorrow. We'll just be doing the first readings. So we will have the time between now and then to submit any other questions, get feedback, and we can bring these up at the April meeting before we have to vote on them, April full council. So some of these, spoiler alert, were a little different than what we were talking about at Capital Committee, and I'll go through those line by line with you guys. In case you hadn't had the opportunity to view those, I can at least give you some feedback. And if you have any questions, hopefully I can answer them. If not, again, we have a full month to get those answers from department heads. Some of you who are here, which I appreciate, makes it easier. For those who might not be, they can get them via email and maybe come back. It'll just be a tighter timeline at that point. So I appreciate you guys being here for any of those questions. I didn't want you to have to do extra presentations because you've already presented them. And I encourage people to watch presentations that are already recorded. So the first is the approval of the memorandum of agreement between the city of Greenfield and the Greenfield Permanent Firefighters, Local 2548, with a bunch of acronyms. Is there any, do I have a motion to entertain this? I guess.
About discuss it.
Yeah, I'll move it. Discuss, yeah. Move to discuss, all right.
I might want to ask if the chief is here.
You want to second that?
Yeah, I'll
Stepped in
second.
the hallway on a phone call.
Oh,
Go get him.
well, I've got a couple of concerns regarding this, but he's in the hallway.
Oh. Fire chief for
Yeah, he came in, he was on the
that?
phone.
Came in left, okay.
So,
I mean, I have no problem. I don't think we have to really follow disposition of order here as they're. We're just.
So we'll come back to it.
come
We can
back.
come back, yeah. I'm away. All right, so we'll postpone that for a minute. We'll go to the next one, which is approved fee schedule for dog kennels in accordance with MGL Chapter 140. Sections 136A to 174G, referred to as all lease law. Do I have any motion on that one?
So moved.
Second. All right, do we have any discussion on that? What we want to do about that topic? All right. Silence is gold sometimes. Do you want, we can make a motion to, or we can vote to give a positive recommendation to the full council for this. So all in favor?
Aye.
I,
All right, so 5 hands, so, yep. Chief? Really like to put this one to bed before we get into Capitol.
I could look in the hallway, but
Okay. Thank you. I don't know that, I mean, he doesn't need to be here for us to do it.
No, that Mike has a question.
But you have a
I
question.
got two or three.
Well,
You can't double book.
Um,
How dare you?
emergency service.
You're mine.
Be careful, your phone's gonna ring right now. All right, I don't really care. We can move on. This isn't a full meeting, like a full council meeting, so. If they want to slap me on the hand for going out of order. I don't care. We moved to FY 2026 capital budget. We got 15 of those, so we got some time. Oh, hey, all right.
Building construction meeting.
I know, they won't slap me on the hand now.
Right, because that could be at 2 meetings.
They won't slap me on the hand now. All right, so
What's happening?
we're going over the MOA
Yeah.
for the firefighters local.
Yep.
And
Yeah, sure.
Council Massater has questions.
And I can't find them. I know they're in there.
Okay.
But maybe you could help me.
Sure.
So you got 7 or 8 captains, right?
So the current structure, but it's changing, very
Right.
shortly. The shifts have a captain assigned to each shift and a lieutenant assigned to each shift. And then outside of that, currently there are 3 captains, one in charge of fire prevention, one in charge of logistics, and one in charge of planning.
How many captains do you have total?
So that's 4, 5, 6, 7. One of them's being promoted to a deputy chief.
But you still have 8 slots.
No,
Okay.
no,
All
no. One of the
here's my
captain,
question.
one of the captain's position will not be funded. And that position is being upgraded to a deputy chief,
All right.
which
So-
has been the plan right along.
So
Mhm.
somewhere in there mentions that the captains get $100.
Not anymore. It's been changed in the contract.
It's out of. the
It's out of the contract. With this, that's one of the things within the MOU that the firefighters in the cities came to terms with. That is out of the contract.
Because you now have an assistant chief.
That's
You don't
correct.
need that. Okay. The other question I had was, well, 2, and it doesn't have to be that I asked you about receipts for ambulance calls. I get that.
So
At some point.
we're working on that.
All right.
I can give you up until November. From November on have not been posted yet.
Okay.
And so that's been the complication with it.
One other thing is the truck assignments. If somebody's not assigned to the ambulance and they have to drive the ambulance, they get an extra $50.
That's correct.
And then if they have to take that person, if they go to a call and that person has to be transported to the hospital, they get another $50.
That's not correct.
That's not correct.
Correct.
So it's $50.
Correct. For that firefighter to come off the engine.
Okay, so
Yep.
why? They're on the payroll, they're on the job. Why are they getting paid $50 to sit behind a different steering wheel?
So that's a great question. So 3 contracts ago, there was language put in the contract that kind of bound us to that. And that was one of the items that the firefighters have held very tightly to, which is not the payment. It is the fact that we assign 3 members to the first due engine and 2 members to the second piece, which happens to be our ambulance. The question comes in, has always been for me, is what happens when I have 6 working and that I can't staff that second rig? We need to be able to have that flexibility to staff that second rig, but the concern is, and rightfully so, we take a firefighter off the engine company, I'm shorting that engine company, and now what happens if I get a fire? And so that's been their concern.
You gotta call it, right? I mean, that's what you have overtime for.
It's not that simple, but yes, you are correct by saying that, but it's not that simple.
I just have a hard time paying somebody to do something when they're already getting paid. They're on the job, they're getting paid.
Yeah,
That to me, and in the big scheme of things, $50 a pop ain't a big deal, but when you get 1,600 plus calls a year, I just don't get it. it makes me want to consider whether or not I want to sign on.
So
So,
I understand your concern. It is not 1,600 calls a year. It's going to be more like 100 to 150. This gives us the flexibility to man that second engine without mandating more staffing, is what it comes down to.
to me, it just, again, the guy's getting paid.
Yeah,
He's on
so the
job.
bottom line is this was an item that was a
I don't
contract.
take this personally.
I'm not.
You know,
I'm not, but you have to understand that I'm getting it at all levels because of this particular portion of the contract. The contract was settled 3 years ago with language in the contract that prohibited management rights. I needed to have some flexibility to run the department the way it is. This was one of the items that the firefighters would, before the $50 came into play, having the flexibility to remove a firefighter from an engine, which was built into their contract 3 years ago. You have to understand from their point of view, that's a safety issue for them because we're shortchanging our engine company. Even with recall, we are still shortchanging that engine company. And if a fire call comes in now, they're only going with two firefighters on that initial response until somebody comes back. Okay? I understand your argument. I have made that argument. The reality is this was an agreement in past contracts. In order to get out of the agreement, we had to get to middle ground or we were going to go to arbitration and the arbitrators would have told us how the department's going to be run. This was a compromise between the city and the firefighters. I don't like it. They don't like it. The city doesn't like it. The firefighters doesn't like it, but it came to a middle point. And this gives me the flexibility to operate that other piece as we need it. I would hate to blow the whole thing up over this one set because this was the one item that there wasn't an agreement with. When we first day of negotiations, there was not an agreement. The city was holding fast, the firefighters were holding fast. The points of negotiations just to come to the middle, this is where we came up to.
right?
So is this,
I don't disagree with your sentiment on that, but this is, like I said, this was a long, complicated, very emotion-driven negotiations. And like I said, we didn't get what we wanted with that. The firefighters didn't get what they wanted.
Could have been $100.
We could
Could have been $100.
well, they were firm as we're not taking a guy off the engine company. And you have to understand that they're not doing that because they don't want to do their job. They're saying that that is a safety concern for them to remove a firefighter off an engine. And if a fire comes in, being short for that, even if it's a short period of time. There's a long, complicated debate that can go on with this. And I agree with you, but I also agree with the firefighters. That's what negotiation does. This came to an agreement that nobody's happy with, but it gives me what I need to do, and that is the flexibility to manage the resources that we have on hand.
so this isn't, I guess I'm unsure of this. This isn't to the driver that's changing. This is to the folks who are not driving, correct?
Correct. This is
Okay.
the rear, what we consider the rear step of our engine. The firefighter that is taking the hose
Yeah.
into a fire or doing,
That makes a lot more sense than what I thought it was presented as, was if a person moved from essentially a CDL vehicle to a non-CDL vehicle, that they may be getting something different. So I'd misheard.
No, so this is a firefighter on the engine. If he has to be pressed into service for the ambulance, they get compensated for it. There were many other proposals.
The others get compensated for it, not the one
Just
who's
the one that's coming off and getting on the engine gets compensated for it.
off the engine.
Go on to the ambulance.
Go onto the engine.
Changing his.
Not the one who's going from the engine to the ambulance.
Right. And again, there were many, many proposals that came that were much more expensive than this. And I agree with your sentiment to a point. But this is what was finally exhaustively discussed, and this is what we came up to for a compromise. I will point out that when that firefighter is compensated for that, they get compensated for the transport. We collect money for it, and the money that we would collect for it would pay that that fee. Without this agreement, I can't, by contract, I couldn't use that firefighter in that capacity. Which means that that ambulance doesn't go, which means we don't bill for that trip. It's very complicated. For the general layperson out there, I can understand why that's a big concern. But again, this was a contractual issue that we found middle ground on.
And from a financial standpoint, that being said, you would. What I think I'm hearing you say is that, not to put people's lives in terms of profit. You essentially profit from that because you can then act as the ambulance, which would then generate revenue, which would then go into the ambulance revolving fund and be able to have turnaround to pay for other services that the fire department does anyway.
Yeah.
So without that, it's totally not taking the human out of the situation as a dollar to dollar amount, we would actually be losing money in one respect.
Yeah, for me, it's always been about doing the right thing.
Right, I know, and that's why I'm trying to take that out of it. We're literally a Ways and Means Committee, so I try to take feelings off the board if no one has ever met me before.
And I appreciate that, but the reality is.
Yeah.
That was the intent of going forward. There was an obstacle to that.
Yeah.
We were able to come up with a compromise. Do I necessarily 100% agree with that compromise?
Right.
Okay.
But it's a compromise.
We can at least say there's a silver lining.
Yeah. I mean, that is the point of negotiation.
Yeah, the context is important too, so.
Yeah.
What else? You got questions?
That's it?
Go ahead, Chief.
No, I do appreciate the questions, because it is complicated. And it's not something I think I can make you feel all warm and fuzzy about it,
I'm just,
but it
I'm
is
here
what-
to save the city money.
as am I,
So, yeah.
So I try to be as efficient and, with our operations as possible.
I appreciate it.
Question on staffing in general. I don't know if
Mhm.
now is the time or.
Now's any time.
Okay.
It's about firefighting.
Yeah.
Talk about MOA, so.
I'm curious to learn more about on-call firefighters, like how often does that happen and is it possible to?
So, historically, the Greenfield Fire Department has maintained a call force. We had many years ago, we had a significant call force. Our staffing on the career side was the same staffing that we have now, but our call force was 20 or 30 people. We still have a very small call force. Having people volunteer their time to go on 1 or 2 calls a month is one thing. When we're running 3,700 calls, it's very hard to pull volunteers in to try to augment that staffing. When we have a large fire, we have a large event, or we need additional coverage, our call force is utilized for that. We have currently 2 active firefighters, and we are putting on an additional 3 call firefighters. And we're always entertain adding more people. The problem is that a call firefighter has to be trained to the same level as a career firefighter. For our career staff, that is the recruit program for 12 weeks full-time. Very difficult for call firefighters to commit to that level of training. In addition to that, whether they're a call firefighter or a full-time firefighter, to outfit a firefighter now is about $10,000 to $12,000 per firefighter to outfit them with everything that they need to perform their job safely. The reality is with call firefighters, and that's not just Greenfield, but it's across the whole call fire business, if you will, retaining folks on the call force is tremendously difficult. We often see that younger folks will get on the call force or they get married and they get a job out of town, or they move, or some circumstances. And we just as a business have not been able to retain call firefighters. And we see that at the Franklin County level. For example, the second alarm fire that we had on School Street, we rely heavily on our mutual aid partners. Most of them are call departments. There were two companies that couldn't get crews together. So relying on call firefighters is, they do a great job, but for us it has been problematic.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. We do try to augment our force with it, though.
Are there any other questions or discussion in regards to the MOA that's going to be in front of us at full council?
I will say that there's no financial order that's going with this contract either. We are doing what we can to make sure that we try to offset that within the existing budget. So we've had to make some changes but we are sensitive to the fact that there is financial woes. And so we're trying to do our part to try to absorb some of that.
But you'll know
We
by,
do that next year, but
I was gonna say, but you'll know by January, February if you overshot it. No, I mean, because it's based on the number.
for this fiscal year, well, I'll know within, our projections right now are tight. Right, but, I'll know by mid-May. So.
All right.
Appreciate everybody's time. I apologize for trying to juggle multiple meetings.
No, it's all good.
That's what happens when you're MVP.
Thank you for coming. Alright, if there's no other discussion, we can, all in favor of approving this as a recommendation of full council?
All right.
Aye. All right, so now we will get to the much anticipated capital. There we are again. All right, the first one, Mayor, I'm very glad you're here because I already have some questions that I'm going to bring up. So it makes it easier than having to write them in and then talk about them next month. So appropriate 16,000 from capital stabilization for the purchase of a fully electric vehicle for use by the Department of Public Works for meter reading. I'm looking back. If you wouldn't mind, would you mind coming up to the end of the table? Super.
I promise.
I only,
We promise we'll give-
I will say I only have a couple because a lot of it,
we promise to give you more than 3 minutes.
there's no round robin at this.
Okay, here we go. Have at it.
So, this is for a water meter, car, partially for the car. I remember, just to give you guys a report, as I was on the capital improvement committee. And I feel like that's kind of my purpose right now. This was we had put this in our little pocket when we had separated things out on what we recommended while we were there. We had a certain amount that we were advised would be a feasible amount to utilize from capital stabilization and maybe an amount to use for borrowing. I think we all recognize that there's been a lot of borrowing in the city for the last X years. X being, go back to algebra and solve for it. But try to limit that is what we were told. We got a kind of financial state of the world, if you will, or state of the city ahead of time before we went into these discussions. And I think we fell into those parameters. I see that some things that we're a little out of order this time, is what I'd said before you got here, in comparison to other years where a lot of times we would take what was CIC approved, come to Ways and Means, discuss and recommend, and then the mayor would recommend after that, and then we would have follow-up discussion. This time, you gave us your recommendations ahead of time, which I don't hate, because like I said before you got here, it kind of takes some of that out of our court and is a foreshadowing of what might be. This one being one of the questions that I had, this was not something that was approved, recommended. It was recommended by CIC, but in the sense that we were going to borrow this money. We had only 4 borrowings in the whole, out of the whole capital package, which I hope you guys have all seen. That totaled 165,000, not a huge amount of borrowing. Obviously, I don't have that much money to borrow. And then the other capital ones that were in there, kind of met close to the $2 million mark, which was what we were asked to keep it close to. I say this only because this is all public. And anybody could watch that. So this one being outside of that, the ask for this purchase was for 25,000. I don't know if you had gone back, talked with Marlo at all. This appropriation is for 16 grand to come from cap stabilization. So there's obviously 9 grand shortfall there. And then also coming from a different source than what we had thought. So
Okay, so I can explain that. I guess it's always good to have it be less than more.
Mhm.
And it was 25,000. Carol got it's a Nissan Leaf, slightly used vehicle. And that was, and I have this on a piece of paper, but it's really back on the desk in the other room. But she said it was great because we wouldn't be traveling that much, because you'd just be going within the town. I think it was 100 to 150, miles at the most. So she thought this was an ideal choice for this. And sometimes it's what is available. As far as, and I forget what the 4 things were that you put for borrowing. I know there were 2 borrowings that are inside of enterprise funds. Are you talking about those 2?
nope, those ones were outside because we just
okay.
considered borrowing for enterprise
Right.
being,
So-
they were already covering it.
So I didn't even put forward all of the things that, by any matter of means, of what you put forward, because after our bond call, I could tell that it was better for us to have more, to spend less. So I went for the absolutely necessary things.
Okay.
That I already realized we have a savings in one thing that we had a large amount that you just did. There's going to be a little bit of savings on. So I had one more thing, like I go down the list in order of priorities. But the reason for that being less is because Carol found a better car. And we don't always have to buy a brand new thing. And I think that Marlo agreed with that. And I would say that probably anybody else here more than me could be talking about cars. Be better first in that, so we can have Marlo talk about the car, the exact thing the car does, but I remembered those words.
Do you remember up ahead what you cut off the list?
There is,
We have.
Oh, we do.
yeah.
And when we have this.
Did you get the original list?
Well, this is
That's what is,
Coming up.
those are what are
Fine.
our financial orders now.
but this is the condensed.
That's the same thing as what that says.
Right. So
The list-
Mayor just messaged, she knocked some stuff off.
Yeah, I knocked off, and none of this was fun. Like, this is actually.
No, I'm just trying to get a
It's not
picture.
a fun time right now.
I'm just trying to get a picture of who's gonna be paying the price.
Most of the recreation was off. If it was safety first. If somebody was it looked to me like somebody could fall and hurt themselves on the tennis court, so there you go.
Yeah.
That made it onto the list.
I can tell you very briefly,
Yeah.
there were 3 items that, and again, the capital is only an advisory committee.
Yep.
That's it. That's all we are. There were 3 items that were not on the capital list that were on the capital recommendations according to this amount. But again, we were essentially taxing out the full amount.
Yep.
So I understand if we're not going to use the full amount because we can't always just, some people don't get that. We can't, I roll my eyes at the world. Some people can't get that. You can't just spend all of it all the time because you have it. I literally took the total that we had come up with at CIC for capital, remove those three items, which I can tell you what they are if you want to know.
Yeah, you were.
And then there was,
Public didn't know.
there was a small increase into one, just I think more or less to get a round figure.
Yeah,
And then, in this one, which was the $16,000, big wild card,
Yeah.
right? But out of those things that we are going to talk about tonight, the only things missing, were the trash truck, which was a $370,000 ask. $75,000 for the Ridge Trail markings for recreation. And there was $236,159 for police camera and I forget the other part of the upgrade, but it had to do with the body cams and I think the cruiser cams upgrades. And then, so those were removed
yep,
so far.
Yeah.
And again, you could always come back with more,
sure.
right? And then there was a plus of $19,830 extra from the ask for the cruisers as to what was initially asked. It was,
Yeah,
$280,170. So it just got rounded up to an even 300K.
sure.
And I'm sure that they probably went up since
Yeah.
anyway, and hopefully we buy them soon or else they're gonna go way up.
Yep.
And then the DPW meter car here at 16. So that, all of those things put together, it comes out to exactly the same number as it would have been. However, that is $645,329 less we're using in capital than what the capital committee recommended.
Sure.
So this is a savings
Yeah.
for all of us.
Yeah,
This is-
that's why I want the public
Right.
to know that.
yeah, and this will be something that's in there. And again, I think it's important to note with trying to shift, the idea of trying to shift capital into later in the year, like a lot of communities do, is very difficult to do when we've been doing it in the spring. And it becomes hard in certain purchases because of the way we've been set up we would essentially have to skip a year, which is very hard to do, especially when you have things like purchases of vehicles that are out for like a year.
Yeah.
Or, like DPW has to deal with this a lot with, you want to do a lot of winter procurements
Mhm.
and early spring procurements to get the job done in the good weather season. You don't want someone, obviously they can't pave in the winter because plants aren't even open. Or things of that nature. So the shift, I appreciate, I will say the funding what we can at the moment. And I'm not knocking at all. I don't want this to be misconstrued. I'm not knocking at all. I'm just saying for the sake of, this was what was recommended. And that always doesn't happen because then we get to the real meat and potatoes of the numbers of where it can go. So we would all love to recommend everything that's on here.
Of course.
And sometimes those things can't happen, but it doesn't mean that because it's not in a March financial order, it may not turn up in a May or a June financial order. So maybe later down the road. And those are things that can be discussed and entertained. They don't all have to be done at once, but I think the ones I will say from looking at them before we even get to all of them, I know we're kind of off the rails here a little bit, but from the things that were put forward, I think had to do a lot with the timeliness of those orders. So it made sense to me when I looked at this and I saw what was removed. Sorry about the trash truck, but that one could be ordered too, but it is a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
So I get, I can see the, and I could ask you this question, but I think I'm just speaking for myself here. I can see what I presume the thought behind these going in was as to why certain things were chosen at the time they were. Versus if you're looking at the whole list, kind of knowing why there could have been a priority in certain ways. Sure.
No, thank you. I think it's important to have that context and for people to understand and to understand that people are paying a price, you know. We don't know how long that price is gonna be, but for now, they're paying a price. So,
And trying to not, and right now, there's nothing in here for borrowing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we can't, right? But it certainly, I think, and if anybody's been paying attention, I think the state of the world right now and the state of the finance right now, it's probably our best bet. Like it or not, there might be things we have to put aside, just because it's just not there, you know?
I do have a question, because on
Mhm.
the agenda, the
Mhm.
copy on the agenda, the tennis court, the Davis Street courts are on here, but it's not on this memo for that.
It went down as a financial order, however.
Okay,
And I just want to say that we put all the paving things on because they had to be done. Anything that had to do that with the summer or that was emergent, we put up. And on the electric vehicles, sometimes with that, the price is changed a little bit because there's a couple that are on the docket. And sometimes that's because you get different, like, sometimes you get a little different bonus. I think somebody's in the waiting room.
thank you.
Okay, just noticed it.
Sorry, I failed you.
I realize I've been remiss on, I always hate this with subcommittees because I feel like we don't have to do this, but somebody says that we have to. There was actually no motion for us to even discuss this. Can somebody move?
Can I make a motion that we discuss?
Yeah, this first order of business, seems silly because we're not approving anything. We're just making recommendations. So anyway, I know I got off a little bit I kind of got ahead of ourselves. I was doing that in the sense of before we got into each single line item, we would have a preamble to what was going on.
Well, this is very helpful.
So we didn't have to get hung up on every single one of them. But is there any other specific discussion on the 16 grand for the electric vehicle for DPW meter reading? All right, all those in favor of a positive recommendation?
Aye.
All right, the next is appropriate 300K from capital stabilization for the purchase of 3 fully equipped police patrol vehicles. Do I have a motion for that one?
I'll make a motion to discuss that.
Second? All right, so is there discussion on this? We have.
We know Chief Dodge has already told us
Yep.
the story and why it's necessary or what's going on.
Did you guys get the backup in the packet and
Yep.
are there questions that?
all good with it.
Uh-oh,
Sorry.
you almost got away with it.
I think I'm not as prepared, so sorry. But just the buffer, like the 10% extra, just goes back to capital if it's not spent, is how it works. And then is there like a trade-in value of the existing vehicle, and that's already calculated in this? cost?
Not yet, no, not yet.
Okay.
So whatever we don't spend, yes, we'll go back.
Mhm.
Right now, what we did, and I think, Councilor Toronto's up to speed, I think the estimate we got was maybe in December. And things are changing quick. To rush anybody or make anybody feel pressured, but things are going up. I think I asked, recently, it had gone up a little. we're mid-90s for a fully outfitted cruiser. Also, with that, one of them is we're gonna at least try to make that an electric vehicle. We're working that out right now with Carol Collins. She has grant money for portions of that, but also for portions of the installation of a charging station. If we want to do a two-place charging station there. Which we just started the conversations as well. We're gonna need another parking enforcement vehicle, which we're clearly gonna go electric on that. So if we have a two-place charger at the PD, one will be for the electric cruiser, one will be for parking enforcement, maybe. There's other plans also, sharing that vehicle at Centric potentially in the works. Parking enforcement is a part-time position. We'll have two part-time parking enforcement. One of whom doesn't drive. So the other one will be under 19 hours a week. And most of that time, may not require a vehicle, even that. So, but we are missing some of the areas that we used to monitor for parking violations by not driving to them. So there's some non-business district type spots that we used to monitor. So that's all in the works right now. We really need, not to reiterate the whole thing, but the vast majority of our fleet, with the exception of two, is over 5 years old, which is, that's an eternity for a patrol vehicle running 24/7.
Just for public's sake, trade-in value on those. Does that turn around in less than the price that's needed to be expended from capital, or does that come back in as a different asset under general fund? Do we know that? So let's say you're buying a vehicle for 90K.
Yeah.
But you're trading in a vehicle for 15. Does that end up being, just for the sake of like municipal thing, like, I know that that would be $75,000 out of my pocket.
Right.
But with the way that these are purchased with public procurement and dollars, is the procurement for 90K. And then there's a separate procurement to the disposition of public property over 10,000. So does that $15,000 get deducted from what's taken out of capital stabilization? Or does that 1590 comes out of capital stabilization and 15 goes back into, I would presume, general fund?
I'll take that. Okay. Because
I'll add to it.
I'll take it, but- because I know that we're having that happen. Because I'm telling everybody to be as careful as they can right now. And we were just having a large discussion about vehicle sharing that I sent the email out. But if you vote for an expense of $90,000 out of capital stabilization, that money is like, that's apportioned with that. And when it's not $90,000, it does not go back into the general fund. That 90,000 doesn't go back into the general fund. It's still there in capital, unexpended capital. I already have a plan for somebody's unexpended capital who's on the list of the things that you approved that wasn't there. So it would be either repurposed for that. And we'd have a motion that came before you we're going to have on the fire engine, there was, because of paying whatever it was, there would be a repurposing of that. That's why I held on to a couple of things that we didn't do. So it's not spent. The car, as far as buying the vehicle, and there is you get something for the car that you're turning in, you can talk on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 15,000 would be absolutely fantastic.
Sure, I was trying to use easy numbers.
So in full disclosure, simultaneous to our patrol cars, the actual ones you see with the black and white, our unmarked fleet is also aging, actually even more so than our marked, to the extent that some are like a 2013. So what I started doing last year was we would take some of these vehicles, because the police manufacturer, the police distributors give you so little, I think to the extent of like $500 to $1,000 for one of these cars. What I did last year was I took a couple of these cars and I traded them to a local dealership in exchange for newer unmarked cars.
Okay.
And what I did in return was I reduced our fleet a little bit and we're working that plan again. The dealerships, the local dealerships give us a heck of a lot more than what, say, we use MHQ out in Marlboro. They give us next to nothing for the trade-in of a patrol car. It's horrible what they give you. So my plan, if it goes right, is we have a couple more unmarked cars that we would call that are really, really in need of replacement. They're well over 100,000 miles. They're probably upwards of 10 years old. And I want to take, I have with these, the ones that the new cars will be replacing. If it goes right, I want to plan, I have 4 or 5 cars right now that we're going to flip down to 2 new cars. So again, we're going to lower the footprint of our fleet. And because I have to, again, it's a dual battle. There's no way I'm going to come at the city and say, I need 3 marked and 3 unmarked cars.
Right.
So I'm trying to, you know, play around with the numbers to get the unmarked cars in a way that's not an additional burden to the city.
Sure.
You've heard of the LET funds that we have, the Law Enforcement Trust. That's what we used to purchase the cars last year. So with trade-ins and law enforcement trust money, I feel as though we can continue to relieve the burden of the city funding our unmarked fleet. We have a pretty good fleet. These cars are 22s, 21s, 22s, with 30, 40,000 miles on them. For an unmarked car, those will give us 5, 6 years anyways of service because they don't drive them. They're not 24/7.
Right.
So we're working the unmarked fleet and reducing our footprint while simultaneously sort of appealing to the city to replace our marked fleet, which is desperately in need.
Well, thanks for the diligence on that, Chief. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to know. It's very smart utilization of how to dispose of public property and get the biggest bang for your buck.
And to be clear, I think on average, the trade-in for these through a local dealership was more like 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting 4 or 5 times the return on a trade-in by not trading it into sort of the municipal dealership that we're dealing with. So that's not to say we won't look into it. Procurement works both ways. We do have to apply to, you know, have them approved as excess property, et cetera, but it's easy for us to get rid of them in a trade environment.
I don't know, I mean, better at that point, a tit for tat you're getting, like I said, you're getting a lot more bang for your
Yeah.
buck than you would just trying to.
Yeah, we want to maximize it.
Yeah.
Again, our fleet will be reduced by probably another 4 in total, 4 cars in total.
I just want to say one more thing about that for any vehicle that came forward, we've definitely worked on a plan for this with a vehicle inventory with Carol, the energy director. We had meetings before you even had any of your capital meetings. We had Paul Newell, who works on all the vehicles,
Mhm.
who knows, who could practically, he welds things, put them all together. And Carol, we were in a room with which ones we had, which ones we could replace with electric or the most energy efficient one. So we went through it and just today, we were trying to consolidate, you know, with people in different departments, how you could do this. And I had everybody writing back. So she's working on that vehicle inventory list. So we have a plan going forward of reducing the number and making sure that it's the most energy efficient.
Cool. All right, that being said, are there any other discussion questions on the police patrol vehicles? All right, we're ready to take a vote on recommendation. This is for a positive recommendation for that approval. Yep. Cool. We'll move to the next, which is appropriate 200,000 from capital stabilization for road work and repairs. This is pretty standard. I think this is, I don't remember how many years, Milo, this has been kind of this is chapter 90 stuff, right?
I think this is the 5th year for
Yeah.
additional road money. Keep up with chapter 90 or lack of chapter 90.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious that our roads suffer suffered a lot of damages with the type of.
I certainly did. Certainly did. Yeah. Yeah, my axle thanks you. Yeah, I mean, I think that this personally, this has been, since I've been here, this is a every year norm. For the last 4 years, I'm actually surprised, especially with the lack of supplemental funding, that it's still only that ask for 200,000. And I think actually is this still the 5-year plan? If I remember right, it's straight out, I believe.
Yeah, we're waiting on blacktop numbers for this year. We don't get them till about budget vote time or after. But if you look at my sheet, an example, since 2012, HMA blacktop has gone up 60%. So without this additional funding the last 4 years, and this is the 5th, I believe, I can only tell you, I can't imagine under our pavement management program what our roads would look like today without having that additional funding the last 4 years. And as we know, the capital is I call it a living document in the DPW because stuff comes up for the following year all the time. You'll see my capital bounces all over the place. I'm expecting pretty good increase in HMA this year, so that may be an adjustment for next year on that 200,000, as you indicated, it's all the way across. So. Labor, everything, contracted services. And I usually have a preliminary list for you. We held off a little bit, for lack of better terms, we're waiting for the roads to heal a little bit because once the frost comes out after a horrible winter like this, some roads that look horrible, loaded with frost heaves in the winter, all of a sudden what happened, they look like a good road again. So you can't do a proper evaluation this time of year until like the next 3 or 4 weeks. So I will say Colerain Road, I put at the top of the list.
Thank you. I live over there.
All right, I'm gonna drive down, that's for sure. But sometimes my city grew home, but I'll avoid it. All right, is there any other questions or discussion on the highway fund? Those in favor of? Right. I didn't technically get a motion and approval. I'm gonna say I moved to do it. Does anyone want to second that?
I'll second it.
All right, thanks. Again, I don't understand why you have to do it. The subcommittee, but. Also, especially because these are only first readings tomorrow. So, right, what does it really matter? All right, next is appropriate 250K from cap stabilization for purchase of a bucket lift truck.
So moved.
Thank you. All right, is there discussion on this?
I have a question.
All right,
I probably should know the answer, but what's the height of the bucket truck? You know,
The current one,
well, the one you get,
it's gonna be significantly higher. I have the spec. Say 65 feet or thereabouts for 70.
I asked because I know in the past, one we have now. Hasn't been able to reach certain things and you hired outside contractors. So will this be able to avoid that?
Yes, it was spec so that we don't have to contract out. Local contractor with a higher bucket.
That with lights? Lights? When do we have to hire an outside contractor?
Oh, for certain tree work, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
some of the larger trees, it's unsafe for our current operators. Overhead like that.
Anybody else?
no? All right, all those in favor of that approval of the bucket truck?
All right.
Aye. next is appropriate 150K from capital stabilization for purchase of a 1-ton truck.
I motion for that.
Second.
Any discussion on this bad boy?
I watched the meeting.
You what?
I watched the meeting.
Thank you. That's nice of you. All right,
Watch this as well.
it wasn't that bad. Come on. All those in favor of approving that one? All right. I did see all 5 of you, right? Okay. Check my peripherals. Appropriate 90K from cap stabilization for purchase of a Department of Public Works 3/4 ton highway truck.
I make a motion for that.
Second, thank you. Is there discussion on this smaller bad boy?
Do want to ask what you asked at the meeting, which is the difference in cost, would it be, I know you justified a smaller truck, but to go with a 1-ton, a second 1-ton as opposed to a 3/4 ton?
Yeah, I think during committee meeting, we do have to have a certain amount of 3/4 tons for the nature of the work we do. An
Black
example-
plowing.
Yeah, you know, like the 3/4 tons, this one's specific, does a lot of the road painting out there. And we have another truck with a lift gate on it for the large bales of paint. We also have some very narrow, short, dead end streets. It's more efficient to get in there with a 3/4 ton and move around vehicles and whatnot. Again, it's specific to sometimes job specific or position specific. I have all 1.5 tons. Certain jobs would be the right.
I had one question on this. This is mostly for the mayor, that to full disclosure on capital recommendations, we didn't necessarily put this one up. This was kind of a question mark. And for the same price, this Rockport van that was submitted by Central Maintenance, and I understand Central Maintenance is separated out from DPW this year for the first time. So I was curious, I know that in your memo, you were stating that depending on the state of the federal funding world, okay, that you wanted to still put that forward. Is there a reason why you decided to choose this over that instead of putting maybe like the Rockport van first and this one on the iffy block?
And that was just from, it was from the meeting that we had with Carol and Paul Newell, the state of the car that we were looking at. And now I actually can't remember what all the things that they said about different cars, but it was, you know, that one could have waited a few months, so that's next. And there's 2 things that I have in the next one.
Right.
So that we really needed. I didn't have any question about them. It was just what you were gonna spend. So that definitely that Rockport van, you know, I've talked to folks about that. That is something that would be, you know, vital to that department.
I presume that that's possibly a less lead time on that type of
Right.
vehicle as well.
And that was another thing that I talked to, like at Marlowe, it definitely, like which ones, how long they were gonna take when you ordered something.
Right.
Like bucket trucks take longer than whatever.
Sure.
And, you know, the longest are, well, we weren't doing the trash, but those take like forever.
Even the F-550 that we got appropriated last spring, not expecting it until probably May.
Right.
And they had one on the, it's just the back of
Mhm.
getting equipped.
Yeah, all the outfitting.
To another area for the equipment we want on it, whatever, but it's gonna be a full year for that F-550.
Right.
And the large trucks we're looking at, it was a year, you can't bet on a year anymore, like a trash truck.
Yeah.
As an example, we're looking at probably more like a year and a half. Supply chain hasn't caught up, again, mechanics, fabricators, there's a shortage of them throughout the country.
And what happened to the assembly line from Henry Ford? Yeah.
Well, when the trucks are put together, they're specialized, just like they're specialized and
Right.
take certain equipment. Sometimes they gotta wait on a piece of equipment or shortage on labor. They have large contracts with large companies. You kind of gotta wait in line, so on and so forth. So many factors.
You know? All right. Is there any other discussion on that? 3/4 time. All those in favor? Aye as well. Thank you, folks.
Thanks.
See you tomorrow, right?
Thank you.
3
days in a row.
Appropriate 34,000 from cap stabilization for design and engineering services for the repair of Maplebrook Culvert at 34 Riddell Street.
So I make a motion for that.
Second. Thank you. Discussion on this one. Pretty cut and dry, or wet as it were. All right, all those in favor of this one?
Aye.
See what we got next, 35K for capital stabilization for design, engineering and permitting services for repair of the Coleraine Street Bridge.
I make a motion for that.
Second. My job easy, thank you. Any questions on that?
Yes, I abstained since I lived there.
Well,
It's a joke.
Okay.
I've seen. All right, anybody got questions about that one?
Well, appears to me that needs to get done, so.
Or the next? What? Yeah. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, appropriate 300,000 from cap stabilization for repair and installation of fire alarm panel at the middle school. Anyone want to motion that? So moved.
Second. Thanks for giving some room.
We don't like fire panel. I mean, I think it's really,
That was last time I
I think it's super expensive, but, that is what it is, isn't it?
Well, the mayor tried to talk about this last night, but was cut off, but,
That's also true. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit. I think it's a gross over exaggeration of price. However, I work in public procurement every day and everything's a gross overstatement of price. So this is not shocking to me as much as I don't want to spend $300,000 on a fire panel. We're not installing something that's like brand new and running wiring. From what I could gather in the notes we got. But just with the nature of the competitive bid business, I bet it's going to be that expensive. Unfortunately, for something that's probably like $50,000. Yeah, I think our hands are tied with a couple of these things like that. But does anyone have any questions? I don't see anybody from the school committee who would want to.
I'm on the school committee.
You're on the school.
Just like to say, fire panels in schools, to me, that was an obvious, yes. And so I full-heartedly support.
I agree. I just think we're being raked over the coals on the price.
Many things are good.
Thank you for the nod back.
Every day.
That's what I'm talking about.
Private sector costs are as opposed to.
Yeah, for my personal school, I'd totally get this stuff cheaper. Anyhow, I digress. All those in favor of approving this one?
Aye.
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 Slow, that's a little I, I'll put a dot. Appropriate 35,000, it doesn't say it on here, but I already read the financial order. It's appropriate $35,000 from capital to stabilization for the repair of Davis Street tennis courts.
Just a second. This was gonna be my protest vote, but you explained it pretty well. It's a safety issue and besides, and we're taking 70 grand away from, the rec department for the Ridge Trail. So this, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, it looked pretty bad, so it seemed like. Are there any questions? I do see Christie up there, so if anyone has any questions for Christie. You have been so patient throughout this entire meeting, as you normally are. I would love if someone had a question, but they don't, so thank you for. I like tennis. I played tennis on those courts. I prefer clay over hard court, but hey.
Thing about cracks in the tennis courts, it's home team advantage.
It is.
It's like playing on the parquet floor.
Right. That's right.
Until you twist your ankle.
Yep. All those in favor of this?
Aye.
Approve DPW water enterprise. I'm gonna run out of room on this page. Approve DPW water enterprise fund to expend retained earnings for 35,000 to inspect Adam Hill's water storage tanks.
I make a motion for that.
Thank you. Is there discussion on this one? These are enterprise funds. Spoiler alert, we tend to like to let them use what they deem necessary. They aren't borrowing anything from the city. They aren't using any other money than what's collected in our fees. And I will say, looking at, now that doesn't mean go ahead and raise these continually, but our sewer and water rates are significantly lower than a lot of folks around. Right? So I think we get a really good bang for our buck out of these, and what we end up using them for saves a lot, especially in capital, the least 4 years I've been here. They paid for a lot of things out of retained earnings of those that we don't have to then take out of our, I would say, our general capital stabilization money by having them there.
So one thing on that, we did raise the water and sewer rates last year. You have to give 6 months notice when you're raising water and sewer rates. But we were talking about money and there's other people listening. They probably will go up again this year. Our rates are much lower than other, it's actually much lower than other municipalities. Additionally, there were two things that we were being watched on. I spoke about the bond rating, but our enterprise funds, they were looking to make sure that we met our revenues. So we were told very sternly to make sure that the fees go up high enough so that we're meeting all of the things within that department. Our retained earnings were down significantly this year in all three funds. And we'll do our part with water and sewer to make sure that they go up again. I think the retained earnings were like 100,000 and 700,000 respectively, or something like that.
See, you hand that back there.
I may just add to our retained earnings and our enterprise fund, water and sewer. Our water and sewer enterprise funds are driven heavily by regulation. If you will, unfunded mandates. We get notices all the time to test for different compounds in our drinking water. We haven't in the past, which has a significant cost to it. But most everything we're doing, it's driven by repairs of the system from year to year that come up, replacement of water mains. But a great deal of it is driven from regulatory standpoint from the state, federal level, DEP and EPA. So I just wanted to put that out there. Sewer, we all know, we've been under a consent order since January of 19. We have to maintain that. We have to show improvement. That costs money to inspect the system, do the repairs and all that. So a lot of things that are driven by DEP and EPA, we, for lack of better terms, we have to abide or we can suffer non-compliances and fines. So we have to stay in order. We've always worked really hard to provide water and sewer at the cheapest cost for the users, but a lot of times this is driven by changes and things we have to do with these systems.
It's just a little annoying when someone from the outside tells you what to do with all of it. Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, and Council Travel, right, our water is a really good deal if you look at the statewide survey on that drinking water.
I think with the new meters, it's gonna make it a little easier for people to pay the bill rather than
Yeah, once we can get
pay
the
the bill
quarterly
quarterly
billing,
as opposed to.
get them all changed out with quarterly billing and the other thing, as far as the revenues to hit on what the mayor spoke about a little bit, we're already seeing returns on the meters being replaced. Our revenues are coming up. And another very important thing with DEP and EPA is what we call unaccounted for water. I think some of you heard me talk about it before. These meters are more accurate. Our unaccounted for water, we couldn't get under the number that DEP recommended for years. And all of a sudden, 2 years into the meter program, we had a big drop off. Meaning it's water that's accounted for, now it's being metered. So in other words, we were showing as using less water than what we were producing. It's how it's a tricky formula, but as the meters become more and more accurate, and we replace more and more, our unaccounted for water comes down, because that comes up in our sanitary survey with DEP. They come in every 2 years to get an inspection. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds with it, but the meter program, AKA with COVID-19 in between, we really got slowed up on that whole project. Is really starting to show its returns, and we can move forward with the original plan of eventually going to quarterly billing, so on and so forth. So didn't want to get off topic, but
Good info to have. Are there any other questions on these here tanks? All those in favor? All right, next is approve the Department of Public Works Water Enterprise Fund to expend retained earning funds for $80,000 to purchase pickup truck. So move.
Sorry, I forgot.
Second.
All right, thank you. Discussion on this one. All right, I like when we can purchase things with retained earnings. I'll do that.
It's easy.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
Next page is approve Department of Public Works Water Enterprise to bond for $500,000 for engineering and design services related to dredging the Green River water supply intake. I'll move that. Discussion on this one. Yeah, right? Big ask. We're gonna be bonding for this. It's probably the only thing on here tonight, I think. No, we got one more bond. That's it. So does anybody have any questions on this one? All right, that being said. Engineers cost a lot of money.
All right, me.
Yeah.
well, all that earlier about escalating costs, and I mean,
Yeah.
third party engineering and design has exploded. You know, we used to put a 10% contingency on a project and recover us, but now we're looking at 15-20% on projects, and sometimes it's not covering it. And
Do you know the last time that was dredged?
the Green River, I don't believe it was ever
Ever?
actually dredged. I think the Green dredged it.
Yeah.
Um,
Took the bridge out
That would
too.
be funny, but I think that's what's happened, but, again, this is a regulatory.
Sure.
Type thing that, I sent pictures, the pictures really are no justice, but, the intake to our Green River, which is 1/3 of our drinking water supply, that goes into the pump house on Eunice Williams Drive and through the trickling filters. When the river is low, we're in a bit of a drought, we have to actually turn the Green River down at this point because it's filled in so bad in the middle of the island and starting to cut the intake off, so. And what goes along with engineering, this type of permitting, engineering design, there's multiple permits that you have to obtain that you didn't have to years ago. Army Corps of Engineers, environmental permitting, studies on species with water, so on and so forth. So that's why some of the costs now it's all regulatory, but it all makes sense. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to it, but that those costs add up. They get 5-6 permits and they take a long time to do their studies on some of them too.
Do you have, I'm definitely not gonna hold you to this number and you don't have to answer it if you don't feel comfortable. Do you have any preliminary thought onto what the actual work will cost to do the dredging of that once it's all designed?
It used to be the engineering and design was 15% of the project cost.
All right, so we're talking like 7 times this, 6 times this amount.
Closer to the 20% or even 25%. Again, you said you're not holding me to it.
I'm not.
If it's $8 to $10 million.
Oh, jeez.
You know, we're looking at the year out, if the permit is done, so.
That's all the city's money.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I mean, I didn't really want to ask that question because I knew I was not gonna like the answer, but.
It's a good question because the Green River is a whole different, subject compared to dredging our lighting plant or water supply source.
Right.
It's like different, as we know. Dredging river,
Not a reservoir.
so the permitting and the studies are much heavier.
All right, sorry, so I'll rewind my brain back 45 seconds ago.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's all right.
It's okay. I just wanted to get it out there so people weren't surprised. So, all those, if there's no discussion on that, all those in favor of approving that?
Yep.
Right. He said,
Well,
slowly raising his hand. Approve Department of Public Works Sewer Enterprise to bond for 200,000 for inflow and infiltration repairs and replacements.
I make a motion for that.
Second.
Is there any discussion on this one? I don't have any on this. I think this is
It's
pretty.
gonna be done, right? I mean,
Right, we're under order, right? And this is, I think, this is this has been a consistent, this is actually lowered. You had originally had 500,000 coming out of the sewer fund for this, right? And it was you.
Yes, and I can explain. So we kind of, I think I've explained it briefly. We've kind of hit the reset button because you go back to 2019 when we did the flow testing and I mean, I wasn't here at the time, but the flow testing was done in different sections of the sewer system. It was kind of a drought year. So and it had to go to another company to provide an SSES, in other words, a full inspection, smoke testing, dye testing, camera work, and so on and so forth. So we've just about finished up the first 3 phases of that as far as contracting out the lining of pipes, the structures, so on and so forth. So we went back, hired the company, and we did flow testing this summer, which was great data because we got a lot more rain. Reviewing the data now, and we definitely earmarked different subsections of the sewer system where we got problems. So now we can go back to say Lake Pierce was the company that did it before. And we can nail down these inspections and hopefully continue to eliminate I&I. We're seeing much better infiltration rates, like when we get severe rain, the graph of the treatment plant goes straight up and then it comes down in a shorter amount of time. So we are eliminating I&I. But it's also a belief that our system, a lot of it's nearing 100 years old or more, it's clay tile pipe that it's kind of like you fix one crack in a pipe and two more develop somehow. This thing show up 5 years ago, I guess is what I'm getting. Yeah. So I just wanted to give an update on where we're at with that. So along with the funding, with what funding we have left in the I&I monies that I've requested, the mayor and I talked, and I think this 200,000 would get us into a place where hopefully for next year, we can start tackling the actual hands-on repairs. We still got some repairs we're gonna do with the in-house staff, sewer division, but again, I don't believe in borrowing money and letting it sit there for 3 years and not use it. That's just, so it makes no sense. So
Yeah, no, I was happy to see that at Capitol whenever something is projected at first and then it's like, oh, we actually don't need that much.
Well, it's been asked me, well, we've been doing this forever. Are we seeing any improvements? And the original total repair cost on the initial flow testing was $5.4 million, $5.6 million. Well, we're going on 6 years ago. And we talk about rising costs and whatnot. So again, I don't have a figure because we don't know what we're fixing yet on the second phase, but anyways, I don't want to
Right.
take up too much of your time.
With that being said, where do you, and this is an impossible question to answer probably, where are we at with that? I mean, the big scope of things, I mean, we've been doing this for a couple of years, doing repairs, replacing pipes and, I mean, is there a percentage that's been done and a percentage that still needs to get done?
So
to
what
bring
came
everything
out
up
of
to
the
date?
SSES and doing the lining of the pipes, replacement of repairs that they found broken pipes. We're about 90, I would say about 90% complete on the original information we had on repairs, the actual repairs. We try and line everything we can because it's less than half the cost of excavating sewer line into a street or whatever. And obviously, traffic, everything that goes along, it's horrific, so. The intent is to keep lining. The liners are good for 100 years. And I believe they're longer than that now because they're plastic, they're done lining. It's an interesting procedure.
That's slurry, right?
Well, it looks like a sock, looks like a fire hose. They drag it down the line from one manhole to another. And there's resin in that sock. It looks like a fiberglass sock. They force either hot water or steam through it. It expands and it cures. And then they go down with the camera first and they mark GPS points with the little camera at all the service lines coming in from the homes. But anyways, they let that cure for so much time, then they send the camera down and it's got a cutter on it to those GPS points and cuts into the sewer services back into the main. But it's pretty amazing that, and it's like a plastic, pipe you can buy at the store, thick plastic, I guess the R35 or 40, it's pretty amazing.
Cool.
Ready?
So. And that's about it, no? All right, all those in favor?
Yeah.
Our last one, is approved DPW to accept chapter 90 funding for $622,758 for roadwork and repairs. So moved.
What's that?
Second.
I mean, this one I had a real problem with.
For those who don't know, that's a grant money we get.
How dare you accept the grant?
Yeah, we're going to approve a grant,
There's no match on that, but for what we get, there is a match.
Any questions on that? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so. Wow, thanks, guys. There are no other topics reasonably anticipated for discussion, but does anybody have anything else to say? For discussion,
Just will be, I assume there'll be a schedule coming out for the budget and
yeah, I'll make that now that I'm sticking around.
thank you, by the way, for sticking around.
You're welcome, but thank me. Yeah, I'll get a hold of them. Do you have out of top of your head days that don't work? The mayor's not expected to present us with the operating until the 1st. I'm sure it'll take a few days, if not to get the books printed for our, do you have a date? Do you think those are gonna be print?
No, I'm expecting to be up very late every night from now until then, maybe next week. I don't know.
I didn't know if you had talked with like the printers or whatever.
Oh, no,
When you
no,
get
no.
them the information.
As far as days go, Thursday's good.
Thursdays suck. Okay.
Those are pretty bad for me in April too.
Okay.
And if we could, I know it's pushing it. We can start these meetings at 6:30 as opposed to 6.
I'm fine with that. Later is always better for me.
Good.
If that works for everyone else.
Fine.
I believe I gotta look back at it. I think I took a screenshot actually.
I thought you were just gonna finish, you were just gonna follow last year's schedule, I thought you said.
Kind of, it made sense. I'm just trying to see, maybe I didn't screenshot it. Oh, shit. I wanted to, I bookmarked it in my mail so I could pull up easily, which I'm not gonna pull up right now. But yeah, I believe we did it in 3. I believe there were 2. And then the third one had the last couple departments and we did deliberations that same night.
Yeah.
I think we could definitely do that.
Yeah, for you guys, it went pretty smoothly last year. I know this year's gonna be a little bit different, but it went pretty smoothly last year.
I'm thinking off the top of my head, utilize, I don't know, I haven't asked Tammy and that's usually my first question. What is on our, hopefully nothing on our April agenda, seeing as how it is usually the heaviest month for operating. I would like to use our regular meeting as the first meeting of that, and I can, solicit the department heads. That's a Tuesday, or regular 3rd Tuesday. Which is what, the 1st, 8th, 15th. Following that, thinking we're going to need 2. I'm up for the following week, doing 1 that week, whether Monday, you said Thursday suck, so Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday.
Just have to check the room availability.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's here that we know. I really wish we would get rid of that stupid ordinance we passed in December. Sorry. It makes it
Sure, make it
schedule-
done.
it makes it easier to schedule. Maybe we can put that on April's agenda so we can get rid of it before we have to worry about it. So tentatively, the next week following, which would be the, what did I just say?
22nd.
21st, 22nd, or 23rd. Either of those 3 days. It is school vacation, if that matters to any of you.
Oh, yeah, the only problem will be, the problem will be, the community relations committee has to move there.
We're on April 28th.
Okay, we already decided.
Wednesday is the only day really that I can do on that week.
23rd.
Yeah.
Would that work for other people? I'm not.
Wednesday, 23rd.
Tuesday, you said?
So we'll do the
Wednesday, yeah.
15th, 23rd. The next week. I'm gonna say either Monday or Wednesday, because Tuesday's my birthday and I'm not doing shit on my birthday, so. Yeah.
Next week, we can't do the Monday, but we could do.
Okay.
We can't do that Monday because of community relations.
Always because.
Just a holiday the Monday before.
Right, gotcha.
But the Wednesday would work.
30th,
Yeah,
That's
after your birthday.
exactly the same day we had it last year.
You're bringing the cake
For me too.
All right, I mean, I think we can get this done in 3. We did it in 3 last year. That way it'll give a little bit of time. Yeah, screw you. And then obviously, if we need any extra something or other, we have our full meeting in May before we go to the full council with it.
You planning on which departments coming in?
Which is pretty.
Yeah, I'll send them to you.
Last-
Last year seemed to work really smoothly with what we had. I have that list. Tammy did send me that in advance as a reminder of this is what we did, which is great. And I think we can stick with that. It kept kind of then evened out.
Maybe must go
There's only one group that was a little bit difficult.
What are the dates going to be for the meetings, do you think?
Tentatively.
I mean, I have to change this, but 15th is our normal meeting. So that's definitely happening. 23rd and 30th would be the others.
Assuming room availability and.
Yeah.
Availability, da, 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 da.
Well, they have to make themselves available, don't they?
Well, not if
If they want to answer questions.
Yeah.
If they want to present, they'll be there. Sorry, Marla. That's my stance. That's my stance with people who make salaries.
right.
Off the top of your head, you know who's going first.
I do not know
It was some of the smaller groups, if I remember right.
that.
No, maybe it was Marlowe might have been first last year. Yeah, you were for, Marlowe
Did you
was
go
first.
I think I did.
Yeah, then I think it was safety, and then it was some of the smaller departments, and then the school was almost last.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll let you know. I'll get you an email. I'll look it up. Like I said, I know I have it. I don't have any favorites in my email, but I think this is the only one I hit the little star. So I'd be able to find it easily.
All
That's
right,
awesome.
let's make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I would definitely entertain that. Who wants to move that one?
I,
You just did.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're adjourned at 7:42 PM. Good night and good luck.